Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I'm Shalinda, and on this podcast, we bring legends back to life. We all love Pixar movies: Toy Story, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Cars, Ratatouille, Up. Would you be shocked to find out Steve Jobs played an instrumental role in bringing Pixar to the world? I know, I had no clue either. Let's dive into how that came to be. When Jobs was losing his footing at Apple in the summer of 1985, he went for a walk with Alan Kay, who had been at Xerox PARC and then Apple. Kay knew that Jobs was interested in the intersection of creativity and technology, so he suggested they go see a friend of his, Ed Catmull, who was running the computer division of George Lucas's film studio. They rented a limo and rode up to Marin County, where Catmull and his little computer division were based. I was blown away, and I came back and tried to convince Scully to buy it for Apple, Jobs recalled. But the folks running up Apple weren't interested, and they were busy kicking me out anyway. The Lucasfilm computer division made hardware and software for rendering digital images, and it also had a group of computer animators making shorts, which was led by a talented cartoon-loving executive named John Lasseter. Lucas, who had completed his first Star Wars trilogy, was embroiled in a contentious divorce, and he needed to sell the division. He told Catmull to find a buyer as soon as possible. After a few potential purchasers balked in the fall of 1985, Catmull and his colleague, Alvy Ray Smith, decided to seek investors so that they could buy the division themselves. So they called Jobs, arranged another meeting, and drove down to his Woodside house. After railing for a while about the idiocies of Scully, Jobs proposed that he buy the Lucasfilm division outright. Catmull and Smith demurred. They wanted an investor, not a new owner. But it soon became clear that there was a middle ground. Jobs could buy a majority of the division and serve as chairman, but allow Catmull and Smith to run it. I wanted to buy it because I was really into computer graphics, Jobs recalled. I realized that they were way ahead of others in combining arts and technology, which is what I've always been interested in. He offered to pay Lucas $5 million plus invest another $5 million to capitalize the division as a standalone company. That was far less than Lucas had been asking, but the timing was right. They decided to negotiate a deal. The chief financial officer at Lucasfilm found Jobs arrogant and prickly, so when it came time to hold a meeting of all the players, he told Catmull, "We'll have established the right of pecking order." The plan was to gather everyone in a room with Jobs, and then the CFO would come in a few minutes later to establish that he was the person running the meeting. But a funny thing happened, Catmull recalled. Steve started the meeting on time without the CFO, and by the time the CFO walked in, Steve was already in control of the meeting. Jobs met only once with George Lucas, who warned him that the people in the division cared more about making animated movies than they did about making computers. "You know these guys are hell-bent on animation," Lucas later recalled. "I did warn him. That was basically Ed and John's agenda. I think in his heart he thought the company because it was his agenda too." Jobs had always appreciated the virtue of integrating hardware and software, which is what Pixar did with its image computer and rendering software. It also produced creative content such as animated film and graphics. All three elements benefited Jobs' combination of artistic creativity and technological geekiness. Silicon Valley folks don't really respect Hollywood creative types, and the Hollywood folks think that tech folks are people you hire and never have to meet, Jobs later said. Pixar was one place where both cultures were appreciated. Initially, the revenue was supposed to come from the hardware side. The Pixar image computer sold for $125,000. The primary customers were animators and graphic designers, but the machine soon found specialized market in the medical industry. CAT, scan data, could be rendered in three-dimensional graphics, and intelligence fields for rendering information for reconnaissance flights and satellites. Because of the sales to the National Security Agency, Jobs had to get a security clearance, which must have been fun for the FBI agent assigned to vet him. At one point, a Pixar executive recalled, Jobs was called to the investigator to go to the drug use question, which he answered unabashedly. "The last time I used that," he would say, or on occasion he would answer that no, he had actually never tried that particular drug. I this is the first part of the Pixar reading, and we just wanted to go over how the Pixar came to be in terms of like Jobs and his role that he played in it, as well as the very beginning and how what the plan was when Pixar was first starting out. Initially, it was not supposed to be into animation. It was supposed to be selling other computers that other people who were graphic designers would use, as well as making pretty cool things that the company could then become a major competitor. Honestly, this part also was something that Jobs wanted to do because he kind of wanted to compete with Apple a little bit, and he thought that buying this type of company with the software and the hardware and the digital graphics that they were doing at the time would be on par with Apple and make it a competition. In the next episode for next week, we will be talking about more about Jobs and things like that, and we'll understand a little bit more of why Jobs would want to create another company that would rival Apple. It sounds odd if you're not aware of the whole Apple story. When Jobs started Pixar, he was kicked out of Apple, and we have European Eiffel Tower and streets over here because Jobs was kicked out of Apple. He spent a couple months traveling, went to Europe, took some time off, and he was still a very young man. So his goal was still trying to get some things done, accomplish something in the world, and be a creative person because that's who he was. Next is also another company that Jobs immediately started after being kicked out of Apple. And we're going to get into that tomorrow, actually. That will be our episode. We're going to talk about that. And it's interesting because Next and Pixar were really big for Apple, were really big for Steve Jobs because it helped him later on become even bigger, and, later on when he would go back to Apple to give us the iPhone and iPad and so forth. This venture of Next and Pixar really put him on a good path and helped him kind of discover what he was good at, what he was bad at, and really helped him hone into his skills. Here we just have the Apple campus. I just thought we should take a look at it. Knowing Steve Jobs, of course it would be so weird looking, but it's also pretty at the same time. I imagine if someone were to walk in the Apple campus, it'd be like, oh my goodness, just like a Genius bar. Like when you walk in it, it's like it's like nothing else. And it's just, if he's getting kicked out of a campus like this, we should at least get to see what it looks like. And we are just doing pictures of colleges right now, looking at campuses, because the Next was a company that Jobs started, also supposed to be rivaling of Apple. And at the time, what the company was going for was to be at college campuses and get those types of people and make computers and graphics for people who are in the academia field, so then they could do research and things like that. Let's see. More graphics, more things. When Jobs was gone, other people would be brought into Apple to do different things, and they had ideas to try to sell Apple to IBM, Hewlett and Packard, and Sun. Apple went through a decent amount of CEOs while Jobs was gone, and not a lot of people. Well, actually, all of them kind of failed, which is why Jobs eventually would end up back at Apple. We are back to Lucasfilm, and we all love Star Wars, or people who do love Star Wars. I like Baby Groot. I have a Baby Groot over here. Watch a bit of The Mandalorian. And Lucasfilm is like really interesting because Pixar started off because of Lucasfilm. Jobs bought it off of Lucasfilm because it was just a little part that he no longer needed, and also he was going through a divorce, so he needed to make some money and sell that off. And that's how, sorry, that's how, yeah. So going off of Star Wars, Lasseter actually started off of Star Wars and working there. And that's how Pixar and everything would end up coming together. We talked a little bit about Jobs going to the National Securities Agency and talking to government employees about taking drugs. I think it's kind of hilarious though. Like, think about it. The government is coming to you to get a computer or a technology that they need, but they're going to question you about drug use. What does drug use have to do with you needing a product that a person created or a company created that's so great that the government wants it, but at the same time, well, he was trying to get a securities agent. He was trying to get a secure clearance. So maybe that has a little bit to put up with it, but still, I just find it funny. And off of Pixar also, the technology kind of ended up being used for CAT scans. So one of those like 3D engineering images, like you see things like this of the brain and the bones, like things like that. It was really interesting to learn that even like a company where we know it today as a company who creates great movies, animation movies, they were producing technology that were helping the government as well as helping the medical field. I just find that fascinating. And let me know down below, everyone, like, comment below and tell me, what do you think of like all of this stuff? Or what is your favorite Pixar movie? Because we're about to get into this, and I think, well, I know what my favorite one is, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. We're going to stop this screen on Lasseter. This is John Lasseter. We have Steve Jobs over here, Lasseter over here, and this is another one of his business partners, either Ray Smith, I believe, and Monsters, Inc. Oh my gosh, I love Monsters, Inc. And of course, Toy Story would be the first one that would kick off Pixar in its quest to become one of the best animation studios. We're going to go ahead and continue reading and see a little bit more about what was happening and give you a little info on the journey of Pixar. It's kind of fun to do the impossible, Walt Disney once said. That was the type of attitude that appealed to Jobs. He admired Disney's obsession with detail and design, and he felt that there was a natural fit between Pixar and the movie studio that Disney had founded. The Walt Disney Company had licensed Pixar's computer animation production system, and that made it the largest customer for Pixar's computers. One day, Jeffrey Katzenberg, the head of Disney's film division, invited Jobs down to the Burbank studios to see the technology in operation. As the Disney folks were showing him around, Jobs turned to Katzenberg and asked, "Is Disney happy with Pixar?" With great exuberance, Katzenberg answered, "Yes." Then Jobs asked, Do you think Pixar is happy with Disney?" Katzenberg said he assumed so. "No, we're not," Jobs said. "We want to do a film with you. That would make us happy." Katzenberg was willing. He admired John Lasseter's animated shorts and had tried unsuccessfully to lure him back to Disney. So Katzenberg invited Pixar team down to discuss partnering on a film. When Okay, I am so sorry. I skipped ahead a little bit. So we are going to go back up, you guys. Thank you for being patient with me. This is a learning process. We're going to go back to the beginning and reread that part again from a different point. The digital animation business at Pixar, the group that made little animated films, was originally just a sideline. Its main purpose to show off the hardware and software of the company. It was run by John Lasseter, a man whose childlike face and demeanor masked an artistic professionalism that rivaled that of Jobs. Born in Hollywood, Lasseter grew up loving Saturday morning cartoons. In ninth grade, he wrote a report on the history of Disney Studios, and he decided then how he wished to spend his life. When he graduated from high school, Lasseter enrolled in the animation program at the California Institute of the Arts, founded by Walt Disney. In his summers and spare time, he researched the Disney archives and worked as a guide on the Jungle Cruise ride at Disneyland. The latter experience taught him the value of timing and pacing in telling a story, an important but difficult concept to master when creating frame-by-frame animated footage. He won the Student Academic Award for the shorts he made his junior year, Lady and the Lamp, which showed his debt to Disney films and foreshadowed his signature talent of infusing animation products such as lamps with human personalities. After graduation, he took the job for which he was destined as an animator at Disney Studios. Except it didn't work out. Some of us younger guys wanted to bring Star Wars level quality of the art of animation, but we were held in check, Lasseter recalled. I got disillusioned, then I got caught in a feud between two bosses, and the head animation guy fired me. So, in 1984, Ed Catmull and Ivor Smith were able to recruit him to work when Star Wars level quality was being defined. It was not certain that George Lucas, already worried about the cost of his computer division, would really approve of hiring a full-time animator, so Lasseter was given the title Interface Designer. After Jobs came onto the scene, he and Lasseter began to share their passion for graphic design. I was the only guy at Pixar who was an artist, so I bonded with Steve over his design sense, Lasseter said. He was a gregarious, playful, and huggable man who wore flowery Hawaiian shirts, kept his office cluttered with vintage toys, and loved cheeseburgers. Jobs was a prickly, whip-thin vegetarian who favored austere and uncluttered surroundings, but they were really well suited for each other. Lasseter was an artist, so Jobs treated him differently, and Lasseter viewed Jobs correctly as a patron who could appreciate artistry and knew how it could be interwoven with technology and commerce. Jobs and Catmull decided in order to show off their hardware and software, they needed to create animation themselves. Lasseter was using the Luxo lamp on his desk as a model for graphic rendering, and he decided to turn Luxo into a lifelike character. A friend's young child inspired him to add Luxo Jr., and he showed a few test frames to another animator who urged him to make sure he told a story. Lasseter said he was making only a short, but the animator reminded him that a story can be told even in a few seconds. Lasseter took the lesson to heart. Luxor Jr. ended up being just over 2 minutes. It told the tale of a parent lamp and a child lamp pushing a ball back and forth until the ball bursts, to the child's dismay. Jobs was so excited that he took time off from the pressures at Next to fly down with Lasseter to SIGGRAPH, which was being held in Dallas that August. It was so hot and muggy that when we walked outside, the air hit us like a tennis racket, Lasseter recalled. There were 10,000 people at the trade show, and Jobs loved it. Artistic creativity energized him, especially when it was connected to technology. It was a long line to get into the auditorium where the films were being screened, so Jobs, not to wait his turn, fast-talked their way in first. Luxor Jr. got a prolonged standing ovation and was named the best film. "Oh, wow," Jobs exclaimed at the end. "I really get this. I get what it's all about." As he later explained, our film was the only one that had art to it, not just good technology. Pixar was about making the combination, just as Macintosh had been.